Audiophile, and I'm here with Jeff Harris of Reference Analog out of Moore, Oklahoma. Jeff is here today to talk to us a little bit about his business, what he does. He is the turntable guru of Oklahoma.
System matching is a big part of this hobby, and so I always try to start off conversations with, what do you want your system to sound like? Are you into uber accuracy and detail, capturing every nuance? Do you want it a little bit more laid back, where even your bad pressings sound reasonable?
So you know how to match components just based off of what they say they want it to sound like.
Yeah, and that comes from years of listening. So I know I don't seem that old, except for maybe the hairline, but I've gone through a lot of equipment and in my home, and just move stuff in and out.
What would be the best type of cartridge to get if you're wanting it to sound the most precise?
MC is generally going to give you a more airy, more detailed sound, and most of the top cartridges that are out there are MC cartridges. MM cartridges have a higher output, so they're a little bit easier for an inexpensive phono stage to be able to.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cynthia the Audiophile, and I'm here with Jeff Harris of Reference Analog out of Moore, Oklahoma. Jeff is here today to talk to us a little bit about his business, what he does. He is the turntable guru of Oklahoma. He's going to talk to us about the audiophile community here in Oklahoma, and he's also going to set up a VPI Prime turntable for you to see how that's actually demonstrated, how he goes about doing that process, and he's going to answer some turntable basics as well as maybe some more nerdy related questions. So,
as you mentioned, I'm Jeff Harris, and I'm with Reference Analog. We're in Moore, Oklahoma, and we're kind of the only two-channel centric hi-fi company kind of around. Most everyone is pretty strictly automation these days, with a little bit of sprinkling of home theater and two-channel stuff. But this is our passion, and so we like to hopefully get everybody else to be passionate about it as well. Part of our saying is the emotion in the music, and that's kind of what we like to bring to people and let them re-experience, is the emotion in their music, and bring it all back. That's something that I feel like that a lot of people miss with just listening in their car or in headphones and stuff, is that they miss the emotion that we all have with the music that we get to listen to.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. So as far as your business goes, what all do you do at Reference Analog?
We do pretty much everything, and we do turntables, digital, two-channel, surround sound. We do all of the other stuff. We are more centric with two-channel, but we do everything, so if there's any needs audio related, then we pretty much can take care of them. So,
well, I mean, and it's really exciting because I think there's only about 3 audiophile businesses here in Oklahoma, and the other 2 are in Tulsa and Bartlesville, and yours is like right next door as far as Oklahoma City goes. You're in Moore, which is not that far away.
Right. Yeah.
So how did you get started?
So like everyone, I had, somebody that brought me into the hobby, that for me being my dad, I kind of grew up with him listening to music, and obviously everything always playing, and, fond memories of Michael Jackson playing and me and my sister dancing in the living room, so records have always been around. And then as I got older, I started buying my own equipment, and, it was a hobby first, and then, anytime that you can do what you love, then, you're not working, or whatever the saying is,
Yeah.
So that's kind of been the path, came from the hobby side of things, and did that for a long time, and then opened the business, and, been trucking along ever since. So we've been in business now for about 5 years, so.
Oh, nice. So do you get a lot of customers in Oklahoma?
Quite a few. There is a audiophile community here that but it's kind of a loner hobby, so not everyone knows each other exists, and so
yeah,
it's kind of fun to be able to point audiophiles to other audiophiles sometimes, and then them get together and be able to listen to music. And we've been trying to slowly develop an audiophile community in the area, because at the base of it all, this is a hobby, and people want to share their hobby with each other, and share different record pressings and different equipment and stuff like that. So it's fun to be able to get the audiophiles together. But we actually have a Facebook group, the Oklahoma Audiophile Society, and it's actually got about 150 members now. So
wow.
It's doing pretty good, but it's a fun little Facebook group. So
I mean, I only know a couple of audiophiles here in Oklahoma. I know maybe 2 or 3 in Tulsa, and I know my friend Mike, who lives here in Oklahoma City, and now I know you.
Right.
Would you say that there are a lot of audiophiles in Oklahoma? They just don't know each other, or would you say that it is few compared to other states?
I would say that the coasts probably have more than anyone. I find that the coasts definitely have more audiophiles than the central states do. But I don't think it's ever going to be quite like car hobbyists or something along those lines. But we have quite a few for what it is. But,
yeah. And you have out-of-state customers too, right?
I do, yeah, and have customers that have moved from Oklahoma out of state, and then word of mouth is one of the biggest things in the industry, I guess. You're buying high-end equipment that requires precision for setup, and so word of mouth basically. Whenever somebody can say this guy does a good job, then it's easy to make the phone call. So most of my clientele come from word of mouth. And
so you have a pretty good reputation as far as word of mouth goes. People recommend you, and then their friends recommend you because they've heard about your business. Right. and so on. Yeah,
I hope that everything's being good that's discussed, but you never know. But most of the stuff that I'm told is always good. So it's and I wouldn't be picking up more business if it wasn't. So for me, the customer service side of things is, because I rely a lot on word of mouth, I try to maintain a high level of customer service and expertise. And so that's kind of what I feel like people come to me for is, the customer service and expertise when it comes to my knowledge of the different equipment, the different cartridges, different speakers, and being able to describe to them, what changes they're going to hear with this piece versus that piece, or whatever. There's not a ton of places for people to be able to go and listen. So sometimes people call me just for the expertise of knowledge of what different things sound like, and system matching is a big part of this hobby. And so I always try to start off conversations with, what do you want your system to sound like? Are you into uber accuracy and detail, capturing every nuance? Do you want it a little bit more laid back, where even your bad pressings sound reasonable? Or are you somewhere in the middle where your musicality is very important, but you still want to capture those details? And so based on what they're kind of wanting, kind of depends on what cartridge, what table, what speakers, what cables. I mean, it kind of goes down the gamut of what they're necessarily looking for, and you try to build a system based on what your customer wants, not necessarily what you find to be the most appealing, because my opinion is sometimes different than what somebody else's opinion is. And so that's the hardest part, I think, is trying to listen to what they want and build the system that they want.
So you know how to match components just based off of what they say they want it to sound like.
Yeah, and that comes from years of listening. So I know I don't seem that old, except for maybe the hairline, but I've gone through a lot of equipment, and in my home, and just moved stuff in and out, and most of the equipment that I carry is based on stuff that I've heard that I liked, and I try to carry things that excel in the different categories of the sound that people are going to look for, but everything that I carry I like in one way or another. So it's easy for me to suggest stuff that I carry because I like it all.
Yeah.
I find that if there's something that I don't really like, it never sells because I never suggest it, because I don't enjoy it. And so I only carry stuff that I actually have faith in and enjoy. I feel like the analog side of things brings in a richness to the mid-range and a lifelike presentation that digital, just no matter how high up you go the chain, it's hard to capture. With a really good analog setup, you tend to get a more lifelike sound, more body, more richness, And so for a more detailed sound and pinpoint accuracies and things, that's where digital comes in and does a wonderful job, and you don't have to babysit it as much. There's no setup, you just plug it in and it pretty much is ready to go. I think speakers make the biggest impact to what you're going to hear. If you don't have a full range speaker, you're never going to hear full range, no matter what amp you put behind it, or in front of it, I guess, whatever. And then your source is going to have a huge play in what you hear. So I think that those two are two of the biggest extremes. Everything plays together, obviously, but your speakers and your source material are going to be two of the biggest impacts on your system. If you've got a poor source, no matter what you're putting it through, it's never going to sound good. In fact, the better your equipment, the worse it's going to sound with a poor source. With a great source material, then a mediocre system is going to sound its best, and a phenomenal system is going to sound its best. So your source material is very important to what you actually get out of the system. A little bit.
I don't do streaming in my system. I do vinyl and I do CDs.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as a turntable goes, what would be the best type of cartridge to get if you're wanting it to sound the most precise, for instance?
So there's a couple different technologies with cartridges. The two that I really work with are MM and MC. They have moving irons and other things as well, but for purpose of the video, we'll kind of go with MM and MC. Price point kind of dictates where you're going to be, and the type of turntable kind of dictates a little bit of price point. You don't really want a $10,000 cartridge on a $1,000 turntable, and you don't really want a $10,000 turntable with a $500 cartridge or whatever. So you somewhat want to match your level of equipment with the similar level type products.
Similar components,
right? But with just MM versus MC is generally going to give you a more airy, more detailed sound, and most of the top cartridges that are out there are MC cartridges. MM cartridges have a higher output, so they're a little bit easier for an inexpensive phono stage to be able to handle. There's some great examples of MM cartridges out there, but generally MCs are going to excel in the detail retrieval and accuracy and stuff like that. The kind of the catch between the two is MMs, you can pull off the front of the cartridge, which is got the stylus and cantilever and stuff, and replace it when it wears down, whereas an MC cartridge you have to have rebuilt. It's just kind of the makeup of how they're made. So it's a little bit easier for somebody who doesn't know how to mount a cartridge or doesn't want to have somebody like me back out to set up a cartridge for them with an MC, because they can just pull it off, or with an MM, I'm sorry, because they can just pull it off and stick the new stylus back on when it wears out, or cantilever. And with an MC, you have to take it off and you have to ship it back to the manufacturer, or you have to trade it in and get a new one and then remount it.
Is it like that with all moving coil cartridges, where you have to completely replace the cartridge?
Yeah, I'm off the top of my head, I don't know any that you don't have to.
Why do you have to do that?
It's the way that they're constructed. As far as just nailing down an exact reason, I assume that it has to do with the way the coils and the magnet system works. But I don't build cartridges, so I don't know the exact oh, this part right here is the reason why. But
yeah.
The main difference between MMs and MCs, and a little explanation on why the MC is airier and better at detail retrieval. A MM cartridge, basically, you've got moving magnet and you've got moving coil. If you think like literal moving magnet, literal moving coil. And so you've got your stylus at the end, and then you've got your cantilever, which is what most people see, which is the actual stick that kind of comes out of the cartridge body.
Yeah.
On a moving magnet, the magnets are actually attached, up on the top inside the body on the cantilever itself. And then you've got loaded coils in the body of the cantilever. So as that magnet moves in and out of the coils, that is your output voltage. So you get a really high output, but you've got this big heavy magnet on the back of your cantilever. And so, analog is vibration, period. I mean, that's what it is picking up the vibrations of the record. And so whenever that stylus is trying to track the groove, that cantilever is being moved in the magnets, and the magnets are being moved in and out of the coil suspension. And so that basically creates the output. With the big heavy magnets on the end, when it goes through those grooves, it's not able to track as precisely or as quickly as the moving coil. And the reason why, the moving coil, the magnets are up inside the body of the cartridge, and the coils are attached to the cantilever. And so you've got these lightweight coils versus this heavy magnet. And so the coils, basically as they track, or the stylus as it tracks, it doesn't have as much weight that it has to move. And so it's able to move really agile and quickly and be able to, pick up all that detail. And so it creates a lot more detailed cartridge, a more airy cartridge, more space around the instruments. It just does everything better. I know there's people that would disagree that they love their MMs, but there's a reason why most of the really high-end cartridges are all MC cartridges, and that's why, because the technology is just, you can get more out of the actual tracking of it.
So the moving coils still have magnets though.
Yeah, but they are mounted in the cartridge, which is being held by the tone arm, or the head shell.
Which makes it more lightweight.
So the actual cartridge that is doing the tracking, it doesn't have as much weight on it. So, because there's a suspension system, and so it's able to move a lot easier in and out of the magnet system than if the magnets were actually attached to it and it was having to move the magnets.
Gotcha.
So, I'm sure there's a reason in there of why you can just pull off the moving magnet, and stick a new one on versus not being able to with an MC. But like I said, I can't really pin down and go, well, this is attached this way, so. But anyway, that's kind of the quick rundown. And just FYI, on you hear low output moving coils and high output moving coils. And a high output moving coil, essentially they wind more coils on there, and so they're able to get more output. The only problem with that is that the more coils you wrap on, the heavier it is. And so eventually you can, kind of get to the point where you've wrapped on so many coils that now you're as heavy as a moving magnet would have been. So why not just use a moving magnet? So I am a fan of low output moving coil. I generally don't suggest a whole lot of high output moving coil unless the cartridge that they're looking at just happens to be, a high output moving coil, and they don't have a high gain phono stage that's capable of handling an MC cartridge.
And so that's generally what you'll see on the back of a phono preamp, right? Is the high output versus low output. If it has both options on if you're going to plug it into the high output versus low output.
Yeah, and a lot of times also has MM or an MC input, and that depends on which type of cartridge you have. But yeah, with the low output, generally you have loading going on and your actual gain. And a lot of them have different levels of gain and different loading capabilities. And so you need to kind of match that with your cartridge on the MC side of things. On MM, generally it's a 47K, loading, and then it's whatever the MM gain that the designer of the phono stage is doing. So, and with MCs, you can kind of think of the loading as a kind of a shock and spring type system, so you've got your spring and your shock, and you don't want one to be completely bouncy, and you want it to have spring, but then you want the shock to be able to tame that.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what the loading does with MC cartridges. It kind of takes care of the shock and the load.